All right, I see a red box. And inside that red box, the word live. I'm consulting my host manual. That, in fact, means we're live. And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being here this evening. We're here for a follow up because this is such a great record and it's absolutely warranted. I'm going to ask the gentleman who's our special guest this evening if he would do the honors and introduce himself to you fine folks.
Hey everybody, this is Joe Pernice. I am sitting up in Toronto, Canada. Hope everybody's doing all right.
Love it. And this is a reminder for those of you that aren't in the know that for the past 30 years, our guest has crafted a remarkable catalog that boldly reinterprets and recasts what we refer to as classic American pop. And first with the alt country legend Scud Mountain Boys, and then with the indie pop mainstays Pernice Brothers. He's etched bittersweet stories out of songs that echo Jimmy Webb, Burt Bacharach, and Paul Williams, to name a few. And tonight we're celebrating the official release, finally, and it's hard to believe, his debut solo record entitled Sonny, I Was Wrong. So with that, buckle up. Let's kick this show off. Brendan, if you would, please roll the video.
Thank you, Steve. You made it very easy for me.
Okay, the adrenaline is amped up. There's no turning back now. Special guest. I'm Steve Harkins, of course, your host for the Rock and Roll Channel on Talk Shop Live. And once again, please welcome Talk Shop Live's Rock and Roll Channel special guest, none other than the incredibly talented Joe Pernice. And Joe, apparently you are back to serve more prison time. So welcome back.
Repeat offender.
No, man, so glad to have you back. Appreciate you coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And are you considered kind of in Toronto proper or the outlying area?
Right in the downtown, yeah.
Nice. How's the weather?
It's cold today. It snowed a little bit, but it was sunny. It was nice. I was
Okay.
I was just in New York City and in Philadelphia doing some promotional stuff, and it's full blown spring there. So I thought when I came home it would be full blown spring here, but no such luck.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna happen. No escape.
Yeah.
So let me just remind the fans if you'd like to ask Joe a question or you have a comment, use the chat function. We'll get to as many as possible. And Joe, I mentioned this before, but again, you're characterized as an entertainer, a musician. But again, what you do is extraordinarily important, both in your recorded work and also performing live. And especially, every day we turn on the news and, things are a bit contentious out there. So you bring people together through your message, your music, and your art. So thank you so much for that.
Oh man, thank you very much. Uh, yeah, it's a good time to be helping people come together. That's what I think.
Absolutely right. Now, how did your promotional stint go? This was to celebrate the official release, which I believe was this past Friday. How did things go?
Yeah, it was very good. It's fun. I used to live in New York City. I lived in Brooklyn for 5 or 6 years, so it's nice to be back in that area. Um,
Yeah.
the promotional stuff was great. We went and did a radio show in Philadelphia, which was really a lot of fun. And then came up to New York and did a promotional event at Rough Trade Records, great shop, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was really fun. I don't always love doing those things, but it was pretty good.
Well, that's because, after watching Spinal Tap, the first one, right? The Artie
Yeah.
Fufkin, school of nightmares, right?
Exactly.
But fortunately, the promotional guy or gal this time was not saying, go ahead and kick me.
No, I might have taken him up on it.
There we go. And, we talked a little bit about this, but I did wanna do a deep dive on it because, man, your influences, to me are interesting. Definitely, hit a nerve with me in a positive way, but you grew up, in somewhat of a musical environment?
A musical home for sure,
Yeah,
not not a tons of playing music. My brother was a music is a musician.
right.
My 4 sisters were not and are not musicians, but there was always music playing in the house, lots of music being played.
And what was the range? Was it wide and varied?
Oh, it was everything. My
Yeah.
father would listen to classical music. My mother was into cowboy music, like Slim Whitman and other kind of country records and 30s and 40s. My parents are older, but they're
Mm,
still with us, thank God.
that's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, into popular music of the 30s and 40s. Like I was probably the only 12-year-old kid who knew who Vaughn Monroe was. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
Yeah,
And
I
then
do.
my older siblings are, my sisters were into a lot of popular music of the 70s and soul music. And my brother was, you know, into the Beatles, the Who, things like that. And I kind of ventured into the indie world. I was born late enough to understand Guided by Voices, where had I
Yeah,
been born a few years earlier, they might have just sounded out of tune. So
right.
you live long enough and keep your ears open, you'll hear a lot of stuff.
Were you influenced kinda by that English wave, in the '70s as well, where it's
Yeah.
catchy stuff with a kind of an attitude?
Oh, well, I love The Clash. I saw The
Yeah,
Clash as a young guy. The first
nice.
concert I ever saw at 12 years old was Elvis Costello. I think the Imperial Bedroom tour was the first concert I ever saw. Then I
Wow.
got into things like, the Smiths. I loved The Cure. I loved all the British, a lot of the British post-punk stuff, and some of the punk stuff for sure. And then I got into REM. Their first records changed my life, and then
Yeah.
you just explode and you're off and running. The availability of music was, uh, you could get anything, and now you can hear anything at any time. So it's just insane, really.
Y Yeah, it's so true, but I think, in terms of, like, original music being unveiled on us as fans and listeners, we grew up, in an environment where there weren't really a whole lot of rails from a creative standpoint. It had not fully evolved into a musical business
Mhm.
per se, where, there was a lot of, demands. I think, if a record company is gonna spend a lot of money investing in an artist, they were going to provide some very strong input directionally where they felt, an artist should go, from a creative standpoint to, in their minds, realize their investment.
Mhm. For me, when I first signed to a record label, it was Sub Pop Records,
Yeah,
and at the
yeah,
time, my band was being courted by a number of different labels, and we went with Sub Pop, uh, mostly for the artistic freedom. They were still pretty hands off at that time. At least they
right.
were with my band. They let us kind of do what we wanted. So that was a bit of an anomaly, uh, for a label that was part of a larger label. They were
Al
pretty easy on us.
Also anomaly that, an artist that had a range of options, would make a decision to go with Sub Pop for all the right reasons, in my opinion. But, sometimes that lure of, the bigger, well-financed, conglomerates, could be somewhat mesmerizing until after you realize what you signed as far as on the dotted line
Yeah,
and yeah, I
I
mean, kind
think
of what you were required to do.
and I think knowing what you wanna get out of it is very important. Like,
Yeah,
if you're aiming if at least in those days, and I don't know how the big labels work that much now, but in those days, if you were shooting to be a famous person, if fame is one thing, you kinda had to go with the people who are gonna spend a ton of money to make you famous. But if you were hoping to, be focused on the music making, you know, ideally, or pretty much the small you would think you had, the smaller the label, the more freedom you have to focus on the music, more so than the image or the rock star trajectory. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I do, and, I love your comment, we touched on the first show, but it bears repeating that, making music is not always an easy, endeavor, and I'm not saying this verbatim, paraphrasing to some degree, but you refer to it as being a magical, experience, and, do you feel as you did, early on before this album was released, now that it is released, that this may be, one of the best, if not the best album that you delivered to date and that you've made great strides with it?
I do. I do. Excuse me, Steve, and
Yeah, no
everybody
problem.
else,
Yeah,
and everybody else. Um, I do think so, and I know it's a good album, as my albums go. Um, and I'm just thinking back. I just think about the making of it and the writing of it, the execution, the recording. Everything was pretty much happening the way I had hoped, and that's how I judge it.
yeah,
I can't really say how people will react to a record. I honestly don't know if you'll hear the songs and like them. I can't say. So when I know that I've been engaged with it really fully every step of the way, that's a perfect record for me, where I feel like, boy, I really like these songs a lot. We recorded them the way I hoped they were gonna come out. They were arranged that the right way. The mixing sounds the way I hoped. A friend of mine, a buddy of mine who I record with, if we're making a track and let's say there's a sound or a part you're not completely blown away by, and thinking, "Oh, we could let it go."
right.
And I remember him saying, "You know, you don't wanna go back in 10 years and listen to something and say, 'Boy, I wish that sounded like something else.'" And
Exactly.
and it's
Yeah.
kinda that way. If you keep that mentality the whole way, you're in good shape for making something that at least you can sign off on as being good. You can never know how people will react.
No doubt, but you're right, in that, there's been times, usually off the record, maybe later after the initial release of an album where, an artist, or a songwriter will say, I I thought it was right, and then we hit that send button as far as, the master's concerned to have it manufactured. Once that happens, you're turning it over to the world,
Mhm.
and then immediately you start going, "Man, I wish I had that guitar tone back,"
Yeah,
or, "That chord just I don't know, I think I knew there was something off with it," but you can't go back and change it. Once you let it go, that's it.
yeah. That's the truth. I mean, I understand that people have limitations. Like, there are times when I wish I had a 40-piece orchestra double tracked, but I
Yeah.
don't have the money to do that, or I've yet to have that. So you 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 compromise sometimes in that regard, but, for the most part, for the kind of music I make, it's more about patience and perseverance in getting it right, more so than money being a limiting reagent in that situation, you know?
Absolutely. Songwriting, I said before, is absolutely stellar.
Thank you.
You've shared some of the that process. Do you, uh do you anticipate, with your upcoming dates, which we'll talk about in a minute, performing, a lot of this material in front of the fans?
I do. Most every song I've written ever was on an acoustic guitar, and I kind of, we don't move on to the recording phase of a song until it's written. And since I've written every one of them on an acoustic guitar, they, in theory, should work
Yeah,
live on an acoustic guitar, and
right.
all other accompaniment is support of the song. So the long answer that's the long answer to your question. The short one is yes, I do anticipate us playing them.
And let me, throw out some of the dates. Right now, we're looking at early May to mid-May.
Mhm.
So if you're anywhere in the vicinity, folks, you need to go check out Joe for sure. But Cambridge, Massachusetts, you're doing 2 nights, at Club Passum, I believe, May 5th and 6th,
Mhm.
and then in Brooklyn on the 7th at Public, Records. Is that a record store event?
No, it's a venue.
Oh, nice. And, Hudson, New York, Hangar on the Hudson. That sounds
Mhm.
like fun.
Yeah, we'll see. You probably I have to confess that I've been so, wrapped up in all of the pre-release stuff that I'm sure you know my dates better than I do at this very minute, so
That's why
please
I wanted to
enlighten me.
get.
Where
Yeah.
else am I playing? Let
Well, Joe, let me tell you,
me
you will
tell you.
be you
What
will
time
be
should
in
I
full.
be there, Steve?
I would say start packing your bags now. I think,
Yeah,
from Toronto, it's gonna be a bit of a drive, but,
yeah.
May 10th, you will be appearing, at 118 North. That's, I think in the outskirts of Philadelphia, Wayne, Pennsylvania.
Mhm,
And then, Midwest, my stomping grounds, May 12th, South Bend, Indiana at the Stock Room East. That's a stone's throw away from, Notre Dame. And then, one of my favorite, places, got a lot of cool history, May 13th in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music, classic place, really cool neighborhood.
mhm.
And then, great college town, Ann Arbor, Michigan, the Ark on May 14th. Any chance, you might be adding more dates somewhere down the road this year?
For sure, definitely. This is
Yeah,
just the first wave of them.
that's great news for sure.
Mhm.
So, uh, but, boy, I'll tell you what, if I was back in Chicago, man, I would, relish to see it perform at, Old Town School of Music. So, let's hear from some of the fans, and we got a number of them here, starting with, Jenny, and Jenny wants to know, and this is always like a hit or miss question, but I understand why she would ask, is there a specific favorite song of yours from the new album?
Yes, in fact, this one song on the new album is my favorite of all my, I don't know, 19 or 18 or 20 albums. I don't know how many I have, but it's up there. The song Deep Into the Dawn, I think, is the best recording I've ever made, I think.
It is an amazing track, and we're gonna do a deeper dive on that for sure. Thanks, Jenny, for that question.
Yeah.
Samsonite's just saying, "Hey, bro, happy
Hey, bro.
to that you're here." And,
Thank you.
Dave H, is also, extremely pleased, and, also, Samsonite 100 saying, um, "It's for the art of it and the feeling, not some audience." It does start with it has to appeal to you first and foremost. That's your sounding board.
That's true. And, that it's not, I don't think it's completely accurate to say it's not for some audience because if I didn't want to release records to be heard, I would stay in this little room you see right behind me, and you never would have heard the stuff I do. I
Yeah.
definitely want the stuff to be heard, but uh, you hopefully you make a thing in your own little bubble, and then you let it out of your bubble. So, you know, being able to focus on the making of the thing without thinking of the greater world is kind of the goal, and then you let it out and hope it is evocative to people once they hear it. So it's a bit of a dance you do, but it's certainly you do. There is an audience involved, or we wouldn't be here today.
No doubt about it. And tonight we're celebrating the debut, again, seems funny to say, but true, solo release from one Joe Pernice. And of course, you know him from the Pernice Brothers and Scud Mountain Boys. The album's entitled Sonny, I Was Wrong. It's an 11-song set produced by none other than Joe himself. The album features some wonderful talent, Amy Mann, Norman Blank from Teenage Fan Club, also the great Rodney Crowell and the great Jimmy Webb, just to name a few. Has some wonderful liner notes written by Warren Zanes. And he, amongst other things, is the author of Deliver Me from Nowhere, the making of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, which led to that terrific film. He is also Joe is by Jim Cregan of Bare Naked Ladies. And the album was just released. We're celebrating it this past Friday And you can order your copies right here and right now on the Rock and Roll Channel Talk Shop Live. It's available both on vinyl and CD. And it's Joe's way of thanking you fine fans. He's graciously agreed to sign a limited number of copies purchased here. So to order your copies, just hit the shop button on Talk Shop Live and on socials. If you're on Meta, Facebook, or Instagram, comment shop. We'll DM you a link. And if you're watching on YouTube, just click the link in the description. The rest is quick and easy and pain-free, most importantly, unlike, as we've said before, that slight arthritic condition that Joe developed, signing for you fine fans. But he is well on his way to recovery. And as I said before, very limited quantities, and appealing to all of you fans out there. There's no greater way to show how much you appreciate the artistry of one Joe Pernice than by owning a copy of his latest and what I believe to be his greatest musical body of work. So thank you for your support and showing your appreciation and love for this talented man. Peace in Our Home. Wow, what an opener. Again, this is a song I think I said before that everybody wished they had been written, but wouldn't necessarily openly admit it. And again, throughout, I want to cite some of the great lyrics. When you're gone, I won't fear the calm of the night. When you're gone, I won't care who might see me cry. There'll be bedridden sorrow, but not for too long. There'll be peace in our home when you're gone. There will be voices rising, but only in song. There will be peace in our home when you're gone. Well, what a classic set of lyrics. I absolutely love this track. As I understand it, Joe, originally your initial version of this was far too long for your liking, and you decided that you needed to shorten it.
Yeah, there was an extra verse in there, and I started thinking, like with all the songs, you spit them out and you shape them, and then you step back and look at them, and it wasn't clicking, and I was like, what's going on here? And there was just an extra verse that was dead weight. I was repeating myself in a way that was making the song longer and, but kind of boring. So it just took the hatchet out and got rid of it, and then the song just kind of popped once it got shortened.
I love that you have that kind of discipline because these are often personal endeavors, creating music, and sometimes one gets too close to it to see that, that's like your original vision is one that you just kind of get stuck with. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is it. We're running with it because this is how I saw it. So yeah, it feels just right. So not having heard the extended version of it, but kudos to you for having that discipline to be able to make that kind of a decision.
Well, it's some of that for sure, but songs are like puzzles. Writing songs, you have to enjoy tinkering with them. So there's the
Yeah.
initial inspiration. You want to feel like you put down something that's true to you and real. And then you step back from it and it becomes a kind of a game where you tweak it around, where you might say, well, if I do this here, it might be a little less true or a little different from my original intention, but you
Right.
might end up with a song that's more effective. And you have to, if you're committed to writing the best song, you have to be able to give up, you know, your original idea for the better path, or you're not doing the service to the song, I don't think. And it's fun to do. Like it's like a
Yeah.
puzzle. I don't do
Yeah.
crossword puzzles. I write songs.
There you go. Sounds a lot more adventurous and fun for sure. And I appreciate that insight and that approach. What say we hear some music, Joe, from the new album?
Go for it.
Excellent. This, I think we're not wasting any time, was the one I believe that Joe mentioned, really struck a chord with him. Again, from his solo debut album, Sunny, I Was Wrong. Here's Deep Into the Dawn. Brendan, if you would, please roll the digital.
That was the good time. Couldn't even recognize it then for what it was. I missed a sure sign. Couldn't even recognize it then for what it was. And years have ago, we threw ourselves, our cares into the wind headlong. And years ago, our nights, they carried on deep into the dawn. Restless in our time, couldn't even recognize it then for what it was. It was a sure sign, couldn't even recognize it then for what it was. And years ago, we threw ourselves, our cares into the wind headlong. And years ago, our nights, they carried on deep into the dawn.
Man, where do you start with a track like that? You know, this is about as good as it gets for sure. Instant classic, beautiful track,
Thank you.
and sign of a great song. And the structure is it feels so familiar, but you can't point to a specific song. It says, well, you know, there's plagiarism here, but it just kind of envelops you, embraces you, and of course, the amazing Amy Mann is joining you here, and you talk about a magical blend of vocals. The two of you fit like a glove, and boy, it just sounds amazing.
Thanks, Steve. When I started writing that song, it happened. I've told this story. I write just about every song in my kitchen, sitting at the table. And I was sitting at the table, and that song happened pretty quickly. I got the melody and the lyric hook and the shape pretty fast. But within minutes of working on that song, I thought I have to get Amy Mann to sing on this. I started hearing her voice, and I wrote it, completed the song with her voice in mind. And
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to be able to get Amy Mann to sing on the song, but it all worked out, and I got Amy Mann to sing on the song. So
How did
just
you how did you manage to do that? Did you kidnap Michael Penn or
no, I did not. But we have Amy and I share a close mutual friend, and so I asked my friend. I said, "Do you think she would ever want to, sing on it?" And we had recorded the song up almost complete without her voice, obviously, and I sent it to her, and she was down with it. And Michael Penn recorded her vocal track, and I guess
oh,
they
wow.
did it in her home studio, and so he's kind of on the record too. But I was really tickled that it happened, and it's just one of those records for me where I was like, I'd like to get this person, and it worked.
Yeah,
And that song, everything just came together right. Mike Evan, the guy who plays the piano, and there's a Wurlitzer piano on there too, and
right
Jim Cregan played the bass. Those parts are stellar
there.
parts on those. It's so simple. It's less simple than you might think, but it sounds simple, and it's just a little machine working perfectly. And for me, and it's not every song happens that way where everything is right. And that one for me, everything's right.
Yeah, and isn't that like the bar that you set? Man, that's your goal is to write the perfect song, and
Right.
rarely does one feel like they achieve it. So when you feel like you've hit that mark,
Mm.
that's pretty magical.
A lot of things can go wrong. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It really is like a sports team. You can have all the right parts, but it's a long season, and you can't. A lot of things can go wrong. So when
yeah.
they go right, you got to take a moment and appreciate it that they
Yeah,
do.
and I constantly harp on this thing too. Chemistry can't be manufactured.
No.
That's a series of chord progressions, the melody line that's involved with it too, the spacing, the performance, all of those things. There's, no exact roadmap or manual that you can follow to say, okay, here you go, you're going to nail it. If that was the case, there would have been one book written, and most of us,
Exactly.
yeah, would be out of business, right? When it's all
Yeah.
said and done.
Yeah.
Let's
You're
let's hear
right.
another great track from this album. Again, wonderful album entitled "Sonny, I Was Wrong." Uh, Here we go with If You Go Back to California. Once again, Brennan, if you would please roll the digital for us.
If you go back to California, please don't take my honey sunshine. How many times must I warn you? That'd be the death of me. That'd be the death of me. If you go back to California, please don't take my honey sunshine. How many times must I warn you? That'd be the death of me. That'd be the death of me.
I know there's a lot of love in the house right now, but this is the part where it turns a little sour, not towards you, Joe, towards me, because it's like they're all saying, Steve, how can you cut off a great track like that? You know, and they're really upset. But, you know, this is how it works, fans. If you want to hear the rest of it, you have to buy the album. That's kind of how it works. That's how we roll here. We don't charge cover charges. And you know, and Joe's not on the payroll. He's doing this because he wants to reach out to the fans. So pick up a copy of this. You were talking about again, you know, with the previous song, that not so much that it's simplistic, but you know, not I'm putting words in your mouth, but not overly complicated, but serves the song, right? Is the term I always use. Here's another example of that where you know there could have been riffs layered in during the break with multiple notes to showcase the instrumentalist, but you know these long held out notes were just perfect and just set the tone. It serves the song.
I think you're right. I think I agree with you. That's what we went. That's why we went that way. So I do agree with you.
Yeah, and again, great chord progression here, just killer bouncy pop track. And you know, and not a man songwriter of many words with this particular song, but it works. And was it so much a struggle to come up with additional lyrics, or was it a
No,
conscious
again,
decision on your
no,
part?
sorry. It was a matter of cutting. There's more cutting than needing. I find myself cutting more than looking for stuff to add.
Got it.
So, you know, again, the the message of the song, it's a little vague. You don't exactly know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think I had a different section of lyrics in there that made the song heavy-handed down a particular theme, and I didn't want that. I wanted to leave it more kind of gossamer or slightly vague or, you know, vaguely universal where you can plug your own thoughts into the thing. Songs for me that I loved, I engaged with, where I meant, what exactly is that guy talking about in that song? Is it this? And I realize I'm thinking about the song a lot, and I'm engaging with the song more so than just listening to the song. So there was some of that going on. I wanted to engage the listener more than just listening.
Love that. And also, I wanted to call out your approach to the actual vocals as a singer. To
Mhm.
me, you take a very unique approach, which adds a lot of color to it. You know, there's just something about your vocal approach that almost makes you feel like you're in California. It just has a certain vibe to it. It really struck me that
It's probably
whether
a
it was
s
conscious or not.
It was probably a very snowy day in Toronto, Ontario, Canada
Yeah,
that I wrote that song.
yeah.
Uh,
You were
but
inspired.
Yeah, I got the voice I came with, Steve, so I
I
hear what you're
understand.
saying, but it is for better or for worse.
Well, don't ever change it. That's all I'm
I
saying, I
can't.
guess. And
That's all I got.
yeah, understood. And also, let's see here. Dave is saying you can definitely tell Joe is a perfectionist. Every album is polished, and it shows.
Oh,
So, and
thanks.
Lee wants to know if there is a chance that there'll be a Toronto date
There
in the
is.
future.
There's
Excellent.
one that just hasn't been, put up yet, but it's gonna be June 6th, and that's gonna be with a full band. That's gonna be a really excellent show. I've enlisted some phenomenal players from Toronto who are gonna play with me, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. That's June
That's
6th.
Lee, mark that down on your calendar. You asked the question, the man delivered. So, counting on you to be there for sure. And also, as a comment here, really appreciate your candor and also appreciate us reading these comments from the fans. Um, and this is Samsonite 100, where I read another comment, but I wanted to call this out because there is a common theme here saying, "Keep coaching, Joe." And
Oh, yeah.
how do you and the bros think the start of the Sox season is going?
I haven't tuned in that much, but it's shakier than I would like, but I'm like I said, I mean, it's a long, long season, so I don't get
Yeah,
too freaked out about a skid
it's
at a certain point, so I don't
too
I've
early.
been I've been following baseball for Red Sox for such a long time where I don't get too worked up about anything until it's over. So,
Uh,
and
that's I think that yeah, I think your doctor agrees with that.
yeah,
That
pace yourself.
approach. I mean, I'm from Chicago. Trust me, I know how baseball teams could break hearts because the 2 teams I followed had the longest losing, streak in terms of not winning World Series just over the Red Sox. So,
That's right, and the guy who broke the Sox streak, Theo Epstein, broke your streak.
that's
So
exactly right.
that's a streak breaker right there. That's what you call a winner.
Boy, you got that right for sure. I'd like to shake that man's hand one day.
I
Uh,
have.
and have you?
Yeah,
That's
dude.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, he's pretty special. Allie's saying, "Hey, Joe, absolutely love the record."
Oh,
So there you
thanks.
go. The reviews are
Oh,
coming in. And Lee wants to know if you're at liberty to say where the June 6th date is.
yes, Lee, it's at the place, the Longboat Hall, which is
Nice.
down on Queen Street. If you live in Toronto, you know what I'm talking about.
Excellent. And you folks know where I'm talking about at this point. And if not, by the time we're done, you certainly will. We're celebrating the debut solo release from the amazingly talented Joe Pernice, chorus of the Pernice Brothers and Scud Mountain Boys. The album is entitled Sonny, I Was Wrong. 11 fantastic songs the guy has delivered top to bottom, produced by the man himself. And as we just touched on, features Amy Mann, also Norman Blake of Teenage Fan Club, Rodney Crowell, and Jimmy Webb. How about that? And
Crazy.
great liner notes from Warren Zanes. And also, the great Jim Cregan deserves a call out for sure. He's kind of like the secret recipe, and we'll talk about Jim in a second. The album was just released, and you fans on the Rock and Roll Channel and Talk Shop Live here can purchase your copies right here, right now. Available both on vinyl and CD. And Joe has been gracious enough to sign a limited number of copies. So hit the shop button on Talk Shop Live on socials and Meta comment shop. We'll DM you a link. If you're watching on YouTube, just click the link in the description and we will take care of the rest. And there's no greater way to show how much you appreciate this brilliant musician, singer, songwriter than by owning a copy of this latest and greatest musical body of work. Force Feed the Fire, striking, powerful cut, great arrangement. This one, as a number of them did, but this one really spoke to me, Joe. And great lyric. I lost 5 years and I lost five more. I was floating around my head in the clouds once in the summer and twice in the fall. I would survey the wire and force feed the fire. Um, not an overnight song, I think, in terms of completing the writing cycle, fair to say. But
Yeah,
once you started recording it, it was like a 180. It clicked.
for sure. Yeah, that one happened real fast. I honestly, that was one that I didn't think I would keep on the record. I didn't. I threw it into the list of the songs to record as one that I thought would not make the list, and then it became e evident really quickly because when the piano and the bass went down and everything, something to this, and then, the stringer and kind of just finished it off. Just one of those things you don't
Yeah,
always know how it's gonna turn out.
that's the magic of songwriting.
So,
That's a great example of it. And speaking of magic, let's check out another track from Joe's current, I should say, new solo debut album, Sunny I Was Wrong. Here's the black and blue. Once again, Brennan, if you would please roll the digital.
I see you moving another crowd. You're spilling over and laughing loud. I know what you're trying to do, sorting out the black and the blue. I'd never judge you, I've done the same. Don't call it pleasure, it's bond of pain. I know what you're trying to do, sorting out the black and the blue. I've got a box full of bridges that we sold. I've got a box full of stories that we told. I've got a box full of ruins of the morning. It's labeled me and you, sorting out the black and the blue.
Man, we were talking about, again, kind of songwriting perfection. This, I think, qualifies as well as another perfect song in my book. Vocal serves the song. What a wonderful vocal. And sonically, just, I mean, it's just like in your face up front, appropriately so. It just sounds amazing and such a great vibe to this one. Really stands out in my book. And there's elements of Warren Zevon and tip of the hat to one of my all-time favorites, the great Leon Russell. Flat out great recording.
thanks, those are two good people to be, compared to. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, it's a wonderful song. Did you sense you had something special with this one when you completed writing it?
I did. I wasn't thinking, "Oh, this is a hit," or anything, but I was like,
Right.
"Wow, that's a good song," and this song happens so fast. I think lyrically, and if this song took me a couple hours top to bottom to finish, uh, you know, I'll be surprised. It was quick, and I just remember it all just happened.
Appreciate your
I remember it clear as day.
appreciate your truthfulness, but those of us that are frustrated songwriters, we just got even more frustrated. They can come up with such a great song in just a couple hours, but that's how it goes. For sure, it's not your fault.
The
It won't
shape
be.
of
Yeah,
Sorry, Steve, the shape
no,
of the song, the melody and the chord changes were probably in 15 minutes, but then I
amazing.
tweaked the lyrics. I had to, have a coffee and then brush my teeth and all that stuff, and then I came back and polished it off. It was fast. This was a quick one.
Love it for sure. Just want to get back to Lee, who's
Mhm.
saying thanks for sharing the venue in Toronto and committed to being there. I live on the junction. I was going to ask Lee to give us his credit card number so we could put a hold on the ticket, but don't do that. It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Too many people listening.
Type it in the chat.
Yes, type it in the chat. You're amongst friends for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
yeah, no, you know what? Take that credit card since you don't have to buy the ticket today and buy that album. And he also wants to know, or she, where did Joe record the new album? And also, does he record other artists? Well, this kind of goes back to Jim Cregan, doesn't it? Kind of
Mm.
again, he kind of was pretty generous and important in this whole process.
Yeah, this record was recorded at Jim Cregan's home personal studio, which
Yeah.
is a world-class recording studio. It's just that it's kind of a personal use, and he allows friends and, projects here and there to use it. And, without Jim's, Jim's a really good friend, and, he's a great musician, obviously, but he's super generous, and he made the studio available to me. Otherwise, I never would have been able to afford to make a record that sounded like this one does. So truly, without him, this record would be wholly different.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lee, we know you'll be there. Don't worry. We're not trying to put any pressure on you. You're committed. It's in writing. I'm not worried. None of us will lose sleep. And it's going to be a great show. So we know you'll be there. It won't be me. Wonderful song, fantastic lyric. Half-hearted loving is a waste of time. They say that once is plenty if you're doing it right. Sure bet money, I can guarantee you might settle for someone, but it won't be me. I was on the other end a long time. It went too far. I had to let it go. I broke her heart. I might have broke her soul. What became of her, I don't even know. Wow, that's quite a story. It seems like you're kind of going down memory lane, and it's a number of these songs are, kind of strong sentiments about lost love or wanting to get out of love, or love that just didn't work out for whatever reason, which isn't an uncommon, are not uncommon themes, but they seem pretty powerful. Like you were really motivated to get some of these messages out. So I'm curious, for example, like with this song, was this one written in third person, or was it first person observation? Because it feels like you were emotionally engaged in this one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of me in this one for sure. Um, uh, you said, was it a first person?
Yeah.
It's first person for sure. The song is about regret, or about thinking about maybe having not been the most kind or thoughtful person, but it's also, there's redemption in there too, where you have to be able to forgive yourself of things, or else why go on living if you can't forgive yourself of certain things. Even in the last verse, it says, "If it's so that I can never change or learn, cash me out now. I don't want my turn.
Yeah.
Lay down in the mud and watch the dirty river churn. Under all the bridges I refuse to burn." So it's also about forgiving yourself too, and that that is part of looking back, I think, as well.
Yeah, I love that for sure, and I also love the fact it features vocals from One American Treasure, and a good friend of Talk Shop Live. We're so privileged that, he's been on, I think, three times, last 3 albums or so. One Rodney Crowell, which another just another, musical gift. It's how wonderful that you were able to, corral him,
Yeah,
into for this track.
yeah. I don't believe some of it. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just legendary, a legendary songwriter, and I had not met him, but we met on a Zoom call, and he and I. This is prior to the recording session, and the person who a third person from my record label was going to join the call as well, and he was a bit late, so I'm sitting there at my kitchen table with a coffee. Rodney Crowell's sitting there in his room, probably sipping a coffee or something. And he's like, "Hey, Joe," and I was like, "Hey, Rodney Crowell, how you doing?"
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just weird. Here we are talking to each other, and having him, I had no doubt that the musical part of it was going to be fantastic. I knew he was going to sing well, and he was going to sound like Rodney Crowell, and he would do what he did. But just getting to speak to him, because I'm a songwriter, I love songs, writing songs,
Yeah.
having face to face, even though it was on Zoom, to be able to talk to him. And, I tried to keep him on the line longer than he probably wanted to be there, but I was trying to pick his brain about songs and stuff. But that was a real thrill. And, I'm grateful to him for being on the record.
No doubt, and, what I'm grateful for is it sounded like the writing of this track came down to the wire, and, if I have that right, and if that's the case, it's possible we wouldn't even be talking about Rodney Crowell if, if this idea didn't, foster the completion of a song before you decided to sign off and say, okay, that's it, we're done. It's an album.
Yeah, that song on all my albums, I always do this, and it drives sometimes the musicians a little wacky, but
Yeah.
I'll write a song during the session that, people will have rehearsed these particular 12 tunes. And then, one night after recording the recording session, I went home and I wrote that whole song top to bottom, words and lyrics. And I brought it in the next day and it was like, we have to do this one. And, I was probably a bit manic about it. We probably didn't have to do it, but I'm glad we did. I just had a feeling that it would fit and that we would get it down. And we did. So this song was written toward the end of the session, the recording session for the record. One
It
night,
was
and we did it. Yeah, it
meant to
was
be.
honestly, wrote it one night, we did it the next morning. So
Love that. Love
so it
that for
goes
sure.
from nothing, 12 hours later, it's a recording. And
And
Steve, if
yeah,
it was the old days, the record company would have had it on the radio the next day, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly right.
bang, 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 the next thing you know.
You got that right. Speaking of getting it right too, appreciate Dave's comments about how echoing, what we were suggesting, how strong the songs are sonically. And I love it. Love Dave's point about for him, it's hard to have the music on in the background. You have to be invested in it and listen to it with headphones so you don't miss the nuances. And I'll also add too, experiencing a great record when an artist and a songwriter delivers a great record, to experience it, kind of in the flow, in the sequencing, rather than just, extrapolating portions of it, a track here and a track there, but to have that full experience. There's just something amazing about that. And, there's positives about new technology, but one of the things that streaming has done is kind of just, again, kind of drilled things down where it's focusing on a singular song, which is not a bad thing,
No.
but it kind of dissuades you from being invested in listening to an album from top to bottom because there's all these options, and it's just logical. So kudos to you, Dave, because number one, listening to it appropriately with headphones is a magical experience. There's some wonderful earbuds, but man, a great set of headphones just takes you to another place. And right now, I think a number of us like to be taken somewhere else other than our everyday lives. So music, again, as I said earlier, is more important than ever. So great call, Dave.
And Steve, this record was made to be an album, to be experienced that way. I am from an older school. I grew up on albums.
Yeah.
I did. Radio was big, but we grew up on albums where you put a needle down and you sat through one side. You got up and you flipped the record and you sat through it again. And you did that over and over. You experienced it all as a whole. And I don't know how much that is done. I don't know because uh, I'm not in other people's heads, but I know that there's something to that, to having the whole thing go by you, and and it's a special thing, I think, and we definitely made it so it would be that way. We weren't thinking one song, or we were thinking in the term of sides.
Sure feels like it for sure. Again, appreciate those insights. I just want to gloss over touching on a few more tracks. I'd rather look away. We're going to check that out for the outro. Another catchy track. This one features Norman Blake on vocals, and also we have Sonny O's on the title track. Great lyric on this one, and this is another example again where the track really breathes and the production again serves the song. This could have easily been an overproduced track, but I'm just going to ask you to touch just real briefly on how you made the call. What for you was the obvious choice to use finger snaps over hand claps.
We just heard it. I was like, it's got to be finger snaps. I was probably thinking King of the Road. I was probably
Yeah,
thinking Roger Miller or something like that. And
yeah,
you know, there you start thinking about things you haven't used that much too. I've made a bunch of records, so you start thinking, oh, am I just doing the same thing? Am I going to hand clap or am I going to use a tambourine here? Which are all good and well, but you start to sometimes think, what about other things? And in a song like that, that is pretty spare for a full arrangement,
Yeah.
finger snaps do the job without taking up a ton of real estate sonically, and they cut through, so they're good if you record them right. They're good percussive instruments, and they don't take up a ton of, like I said, a lot of the real estate the sonic real estate.
Absolutely. Is it serious torchy track? Really refreshing shift. I think as far as the sequencing, great vibe.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, kudos on that for sure. And I also wanted to single out a wonderful single singer featured on this track, a young lady by the name of Laura Stein. Okay, perhaps there might be some connection between the two, but you know, you might have had to push her a little bit to lay down the track, and we're thankful you did.
I tricked her into marrying me a bunch of years ago, and now she has to
But
sing. Or
I didn't
I
want to
said,
paint you in a corner, Joe, but thanks for coming clean.
I said, if you don't do it, then I'll have to pay someone else. And she's like, enough money on this record already, you fool.
Yeah,
But
and
no,
let me yeah.
my wife was in a band that we were both signed to Sub Pop at the same time. We met in the early '90s, and she was the piano player in the Pernice Brothers for a number of years. So I called
Love
her
it.
out of retirement. I coaxed her.
Good for you, man. Great move. 20,000 times. Another to me, it's an instant classic.
Thank you.
Magical arrangement for sure, man. This one's worth the price of admission, and it got away from me. We talked about it before, but this was kind of a nod to the great Jimmy Webb, and how wonderful to actually have Jimmy Webb performing on this track on
Crazy.
piano. Pretty
Crazy.
amazing.
Yeah, tell me about it. He's like my Beatles, right? And now
Yeah.
here he is. He's on my record.
Man,
Crazy.
you checked a lot of boxes on this record, and you delivered great material for sure. Hit the shop button on Talk Shop Live. The man is also signed, limited number of vinyl and CD copies. If you're on Meta, just comment the word shop. We'll DM you a link. And if you're checking this out on YouTube, just click the link in the description. I wanted to do a shout out before we go to all the fans for being here and for your passion and support of Joe. Special thanks to our good friend Tommy Robinson, and also thanks to Caroline Barfield, both at New West Records. Talk about people who are pretty passionate about their artists. Also to Katie Keller, and thanks to Jack Patton Smith, and also to Chris DeBono at Red Eye for you know, helping to pave the pathway for us being here tonight with Joe, and also you know, to our good friend Steve Svacina. I always get that wrong. Svacina. I'll get it right. Svacina. Steve, thank you. Send me the bill for muffing that up once again. But man does great work over at Red Eye. Big supporter. Jake Anderson of Talk Shop Live, and everyone at the Orchard, and our fulfillment partners, All Media Supply, to Brian and Sandy and Tina and Joe and Jenny and let's see, Marty, Kate, Sam, and behind the scenes doing great work. Brendan, thanks so much, Brendan. Also, our good friend Brad Edwards. All these fine folks at Talk Shop Live. But most importantly, to Joe Pernice for sharing all of his musical gifts with all of us. And while you're at it, pick up a copy of this great album. Pick one up for your friends and family. Spread the gospel of Joe Pernice, and particularly this great album. It will give joy to people over and over again. You'll keep coming back to that album, and an heirloom, because the man has personally signed it. And music is in arts, for that matter, is a gift that keeps on giving. Your friends and family will thank you for it. You've worked hard. You deserve it.
Pretty good.
Absolutely. That's right. And you know
Can
what?
I say something, Steve, before
Of
you go?
course you can. This is your show.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate you helping get the word out there. And just to all the fans who have been listening for a long time, I've been making records for a long time, and there are people who have been listening the whole way, and I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I would have no reason to put records out if there weren't people like that listening. So I really appreciate that.
Well, you're an important artist. You're an important songwriter, important singer. And again, these are gifts that you provide us. And I'm grateful that we have this forum to share. And I hope this will just be the beginning of our relationship, of being able to discuss great music together, and look forward to hopefully seeing you on the road this year.
I know. I'd love that. Let me know. Maybe we'll meet up.
Look forward to that for sure. And with that, everyone, I just want to say thanks again for being here. And to everyone, enjoy life. You know what? Embrace each other. Rock on. Joe, thanks again for being here.
Cheers. Thank you.
So long, everybody.
Bye.
If you should see her when we're